Small business owners form tight bonds with the communities they serve. Business owners tend to be more driven by their customers and clients rather than Wall Street or Washington, D.C. In a recent study, 72% of people believe that locally owned businesses were more likely than large companies to be involved in improving their communities. Inevitably, some owners find themselves called to service as elected officials. Today, we meet two of the many business owners that have successfully run for public office. I'm Lisa Smith, and this is Focus on Business. Micah, welcome and thank you for being here today. We're talking about people who are transitioning from owning a company to being a legislator. There are close to 900,000 business owners in the state of Michigan, and not everybody's going to run for office. So my question for you is, what do we do if we want to get involved in improving the business climate?
Yeah, so SBAM actually has something that we call our grassroots network, and this takes all of our small business owners that are actually involved in our association right now and starts trying to move them to the next level in advocacy. So specifically what we do before legislation comes up for a vote is we send out a call to action to all of our members so that they can have their voice right at the table of policy making down here in the state capitol. Also, before stuff comes up for legislation, we tend to have some task forces of small business owners where we bring small business owners together and we dive deep into policy issues so we can be proactive in creating a pro-small business climate here in Michigan.
If you want to get involved with any of this, what would you do?
Yeah, so if you go to SBAM's website and you go to our advocacy center, there's actually a place where you can subscribe to be a part of this grassroots network right there on our website.
Terrific information. Thank you so much. Here with me today is Tommy Brann, owner of Brann Steakhouse and state representative for District 77. Donna Lasinski, who represents Michigan's 52nd House District and the president of Think Stretch. And Brian Calley, president of the Small Business Association of Michigan and former lieutenant governor of Michigan. Brian, how important is it to have small business owners in our legislature?
When you consider how important small business owners are to literally every single community across our state, it becomes very clear that that perspective is one that is needed in public policy making. People that have experience in building things in their community, making things happen, creating opportunity for other people, taking chances, and have had to put together capital and teams in this overlay with government, with local, state, and federal government rules and regulations and taxes. Just having experience working through those things, it's a perspective that is absolutely needed in that public policy arena. It's like having the experience of signing the front side of a paycheck and what it takes to be in a position to do that. With that experience brought to the table in the process, I think we should get better laws, more practical input into the process.
I completely agree. The weight that you carry as a business owners for your employees, their families, your customers, your family, it is great. It's an emotional toll that we carry around with us, which is I'm very, very interested to know. How long did you contemplate really running for office, and then what was that final motivation that said, I'm gonna make this run?
Well, it took me about 8 years. I mean, it was really a big decision because I own a restaurant, and being a politician can be cruel. People can be cruel to you and essentially take it out in your business. So it was a risk for me to do. But I did it because I believe in free enterprise, and I'm trying to get free enterprise introduced in school systems. I want the future entrepreneurs from 8th grade to know that they can do it and they don't have to go to college. So that's why I ran.
You know, as I was looking at the decision, I was really driven in the same way that I was driven to start my small business, which is from a community need. So my kids attended a school that was a Title I school, which means there's a lot of kids on free and reduced lunch. And I was looking at the achievement gap there and what were some ways we could address that. My business was born out of that. And it was because of that real passion I have to make sure every child has the ability to reach their full opportunity. And taking a look at the education landscape, it propelled me into the school board and then Brann to the State House. But it was a very difficult decision, and it was a decision made in partnership with the key leader, with my business partner, to say, okay, how do we do both of these things at once? It was difficult. She took on a tremendous burden, and as we've moved through this, it's something we've had to sort out to keep both the representation of the district strong and the company strong as well.
You mentioned a partner and having to keep yourself strong. That's the single biggest question. I cannot imagine managing a business and managing a campaign at the same time. It sounds to me like you're really managing two businesses at that point. How did you get through that?
Well, absolutely, and it's one of those points in time where, you know, we've seen a lot of businesses where the inventor, the creator of the business, has had to take a step back and trust that those that they have alongside them will be able to carry the ball forward, and that's exactly what I needed to do. We had to hire in order to replace the functions that I used to do when I was there on an everyday basis, and again, that's a careful balancing act with any business.
Yeah. How about you, Tommy?
Well, restaurants really have low margins, so I had to do both. And I would go to the restaurant at night. I would still go door to door, and actually, it sort of helped me because, you know, I'm still Tommy Brann, so I'm pushing brands. But I would go and tell why I'm running door to door, and I would come back to my restaurant at night. And I still go in the morning, so I had to do both, which is fine, and it kept me in touch.
That's interesting. You're still promoting Tommy Brann.
Yeah.
As a business.
I know.
Well, one thing to point out, though, is that small business owners are used to working all the time. I mean, there's not a time when it's not 5 o'clock and you're done. So this idea of just a continuous work cycle and having to have the work ethic behind it to just do whatever you have to do to get it all done, it's what makes business owners, I think, such a valuable parts of this process, because there is a lot of work to be done. There's a heavy load to be carried when it comes to making public policy. Business owners get that. I'd also point out, too, we have two business owners on different sides of the political aisle as well. Sometimes it gets, people think of, you know, business as one side and that it's not something that is bipartisan. But to us at the association, at the Small Business Association, we look at small business as a very bipartisan issue. That every community across our state, whether they typically vote for Democrats or typically vote for Republicans or one of those swing districts, that they're made up of just regular people that took a chance and started a business, created opportunity for their community, and they could have all kinds of different political backgrounds and philosophies, and every one of them brings value to the table.
I agree. I'm having so much experience with many owners now because I'm part of SBAM's Leadership Council. I noticed that I really believe that owners possess and develop unusual skill set, and I think at the top of that list is grit. They absolutely bull through what needs to happen. Leadership skills. There are things that happen, critical thinking that has to happen in a way that as an employee you don't necessarily have to think critically while taking on risk. I think those are very unusual subsets. And so I think that this idea of risk and running for office, having that alongside you all the time, is very clear. My question here is, what did your employees think when you announced, I'm going to be running for office? Was there an impact there?
I think for mine, it was a pretty natural progression because, again, my business was born out of a passion and a need in the community. I progressed to school board, and so moving to State House when the opportunity arose with an open seat, I don't think was necessarily a surprise to anyone, but what I was surprised about was how much I thought that I would be able to Brian's point, to be able to, and to Tommy's point, to be able to do two things at once, and you know, working the campaign, doing a lot of the small business work, as Tommy mentioned, late at night, early in the morning, over the weekends. Just got to the point where I had to make that decision and figure out where was it really best. Was it best for me to be giving 110% to two things, or did I need to look at and trust and hand some things over? And so I think folks were actually glad to have the opportunity to take on some new roles and some new perspectives.
Well, my employees, I mean, they they see enough of me, so they probably were glad to get rid of me for a little while. So, but they encouraged me, and some voted for me actually in my district. I had signs in their yards. I didn't demand it, of course, but they wanted to have it. So I worked with them. I got like Jenny's been with me for about 40 years. She started as a server, and now she's supervisor. And she encouraged me, and that meant a lot to me.
That's wonderful. Yeah, it's labor of love for sure. I think some people do recognize that, even if they're not called. So now you are in the legislature, and can you give us a greater understanding of what you perceive to be needs to be done to create more momentum for small business?
Well, I mean, I'm good at this job, being a state rep, and my business makes me good at this job. Like, I came back last December one night, and Leah, my bartender, came to me, and I just got back about 6:30 from Lansing. She said, there's somebody in the bathroom, sadly stripped down to his underwear, and he was homeless, and he came off the street, and he was drunk. And I got him dressed, and I took him to Mel Trotter. Some of my colleagues that night didn't experience that frontline experience and sadness in life, and that's what makes me really good at this job, and also made me really fight for more shelter money, because Mel Trotter took good care of him. He came back the next day sober and thanked me. So, and he left his cell phone too, so he had to get that. So,
good. As I look at it with small businesses and with my experience bringing small business experience to the legislature, one of the things that I'm very in touch with is how difficult it can be to make that decision to put yourself at risk and to put your paycheck and others' paychecks all on your shoulders. And one of the things that I'm very passionate about is making sure that state government isn't an obstacle to us expanding small businesses in the state. It can be very difficult depending on the type of business you open. You have to deal with sales tax, you have to deal with health and safety regulation, you may have to deal with a license. And it is very difficult right now to be able to figure out as a small business owner, where do I go? And as we've already spoken about, often time is one of your most precious resources as a small business owner. So if I'm spending a couple hours trying to figure out where to go and what to do and how do I get something done, that's time I could be investing in growing my business, training my employees, meeting new customers. So the role of the Small Business Association in helping out small business owners, as well as the role of simplifying state government and making it easier to navigate for small business owners, is just critical to all of us moving forward with successful, healthy businesses.
And both of these representatives have been very active and very involved in raising the profile of small business within state government and in the economic development world, and then also the regulatory environment. That state government should be a customer service organization, one that you don't have to try to figure out how to comply, but it's it's made easy for you to get the information that you need. Because small business owners are great leaders, and they want to do the right thing. My experience is that following whatever rules are in place, they will, as long as they know what they are, and that things are clearly articulated, and that's just one of the areas where I think that there's good work yet to be done, in just making the information more accessible, and that's why having representatives like these is so important.
You mentioned some of the things you're passionate about. I wanted to back up just a little bit, because I think there are broad strokes of passions that we have that are potentially going to feed small business in ways. For example, education. When you look at education and then you look at our labor force, those two things are directly linked.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so your passion really comes from that early childhood.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I started out, again, identifying a need in my children's elementary school. And there's something called the achievement gap, this idea that children from different sectors of our economy or different geographies have a little bit tougher time reaching their full potential. And so I started tackling it at the elementary school level, but then recognized that early childhood, that a child who starts kindergarten behind rarely ends up ahead, and looked at that as well. And that was actually my first step into state government, which is something I recommend for all small business owners. I nominated by the then governor to be placed onto a commission that was looking at these issues. And it's a great first step for small business owners to look at all the different commissions we have at the state level. And you can fill out an online form and ask to be nominated onto that commission to begin to impact decisions at the state government level. And doing that gave me that experience and let me understand how much, as a small business owner, as a passionate person in my community. You mentioned how small business owners really give to their communities in ways that are different than large businesses, and we do. And it's another way to give back to your community, to bring your passion, your business expertise to state government and feed it into that process in a way that doesn't require being elected at the outset.
Well, I was a C average student in high school, and my dad just taught work ethic, work ethic, work ethic. My mom died when I was 13, so he put us to work, and I call it the John Brann Work Release Program, so we wouldn't get in trouble. So I just want the kids to know that they can do it. I mean, Fred Myers, they started with one truck. I mean, Steve Jobs, he went to college, but then he dropped out, and he started in his garage. I mean, it can be done by kids. I have 2 kids right now at Godwin High School that are landscapers, and they got their own landscaping business. So I mean, I just want to give the kids hope. And I'm not saying don't go to college, but college is not always the answer. It's a work ethic and being focused.
Yeah, opportunity is probably as important as, just somebody behind you saying, here's your work release program. That's fantastic.
And there's nothing wrong with success. There's nothing wrong with being the Myers of the world. I mean, big corporations, they give back to community too. I mean, I've seen Myers named throughout the whole state of Michigan helping out the community. So that's why I really want to get free enterprise school systems, because we should celebrate successful people and pat them on the back.
Yes, that climate of entrepreneurship early.
Right.
So I'm thinking about, I'm personally not thinking about running for office, but as I think about an owner running for office, there is a little bit of a kind of a sag feeling there, like, oh, there's one more thing I would have to figure out if I was going to run for office. It just seems insurmountable. You talking about commissions, I had no idea. That's just fantastic information. But there's got to be more help out there. I've got to believe that the Small Business Association of Michigan or other people locally within your communities helped in other ways.
It's part of what we do is we help our members that are thinking about running for office get prepared to do that. Just to learn about the system. It's not really intuitive. You know, running for office, it's not like this logical A plus B equals C, you know, you follow the formula and you're successful in the end. And there's really no substitute for experience. So experience running a business is that feeds really well into some of the things required to run for office, but also, as Representative Lasinski mentioned, serving on a board or commission. Could be at the local level or at the state level. And there are literally hundreds of different options. Just give you some experience with that. Sometimes it's within a local political party, and just kind of figuring out the way that the way that volunteering works and just the mechanics of running a campaign, and then also local elected office. So running for office at the local level, to maybe usually if you make a mistake in a local office, it's not as costly when it comes to the overall kind of political scene. You can really learn it a little better before you step onto that state scene. So there are a lot of different ways or pathways that are potential for that, but we at the association, we just love when business owners run. And whether they're Republicans or Democrats, when one of our members said, hey, we're willing to step up and fill this need and go after this, we want to support them, especially in the beginning with information, just how to do it. What does it take to get on a ballot? And how do you prioritize your time and make sure that the things that you're doing are really going to help you achieve that goal.
Are there actual resources at SBAM if you are a member and you want to run?
We even do campaign schools here. So we'll hold a couple of times a year. We'll invite in for usually it's on Saturdays because that's just when people are a little more available, and we'll go through all kinds of things. It could be fundraising. It could be the door-to-door, how do you know whose door to knock on? What are some of the issues, some briefings and background on issues of the day and what people are talking about.
Great. So, final question. How's your business doing now that you're in office?
Well, last night I worked and it was slow. Monday nights in the restaurant business is slow, and that's where I can relate to small business owners and what we go through, because that just gets your stomach queasy. So it's been a little bit off. A casual restaurant business is a different monster nowadays, but we're still, you know, luckily my place is debt free, so we're working at that. So
Nice.
well, thank you for asking.
So, eat at Brann's, right?
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I grew up eating at Brann's, so.
Oh, thank you so much.
Good. Well, the issue of the achievement gap is not going away, unfortunately. We are, with our business, we're lucky to be in 38 states serving schools and districts across the country, so that helps equalize things for us, where the local economy or funding may change in one direction or the other. When you're balanced that way across the nation, it smooths things out a bit, so that's good.
Great. Thank you so much for taking time today. Jeff, there's a lot of moving parts when you're going to run for office, a lot of logistics. You're basically splitting your attention, opening another office. The logistics of IT and cybersecurity alone, we're hearing a lot about that in the news and politics right now.
Right.
Even on a local race, what do you have to think about?
Yeah, so the cybersecurity piece is really, really significant, because even at that level, like you said, the local race, somebody wants to interfere with it. And it might not be Russia or the government of Russia, but somebody could interfere with it. And the deal with that is, as a business owner, they have their stuff all secure with their IT, but they're now off on this other thing and they're not thinking about it. So you have to think about it. And the people that come to work for you are what? They're volunteers typically, and those people maybe not thinking about it, are not trained properly. And email is the biggest source of someone getting attacked. So if they can compromise someone's email, which we know today has all this information back and forth, strategies between campaign workers, etc., all that's in there. And if someone's password is compromised, then whoever wants to access it could, and now they're in trouble.
Well, bless their hearts, they're volunteering their free time to do this, right? So
Right.
I would imagine they're thinking, I'm going to schedule a doctor's appointment, I'm going to shop for Christmas right now, I've got a little bit of a break. Do you talk to folks that are your volunteers? Do you have a
Yes.
policy? Do you go that far?
Yeah, so that stuff needs to happen. Just like in your business, you need those people who if they have an email that has the campaign domain name on it, they need to be trained on how to treat that email properly. And if they're not, then somebody's going to be in trouble.
Get your paper shredder out
Yes,
and make sure you don't keep passwords around.
yes.
Lock it all down just like you would.
Exactly. Treat it just like your business.
All right. That is a lot to think about.
Yes,
2 separate policies. Thanks so much.
you're welcome.
Focus on Tech, brought to you by Providence, making technology easier.
Alex, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
You have worked for both state and federal campaigns for close to a decade now. What advice would you give to business people who are interested in running for office?
Sure. Well, politics is certainly a unique area. Business is a good step to take first before you go into politics. I think the first piece of advice that I would give somebody who's running a business who would like to run for office is to continue to do something they're probably already doing, and that's network. They should be out at Rotary clubs, B&I groups, Lions, VFW, local chambers, local realtors, spending some time with some of the folks who may end up going to the polls and voting for them. Another step in that is people don't think a lot about this, but especially for a state house or a state senate seat, to be out in the neighborhoods of a district that you're running for. knocking on doors and meeting the folks who may end up going to the polls and making a choice between you and another candidate is one of the most important things you can do. I had an experience with a candidate who knocked on 100,000 doors through the course of about a 10-month campaign, and he won a district that he really shouldn't have won. And a lot of that is due to the one-on-one time he spent with those folks. The last thing I would say that is a little less on the practical side and a little more on the philosophical is if you're going to run for office, sit down with a piece of paper and write down 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 of your core values. Put that in your wallet or your purse and make sure it's with you all the time as you run and as you serve, because having those few things that you know you won't compromise on is extremely important for an elected official.
Great. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for the time.
Focus on Banking, brought to you by Michigan Bankers Association.
So what should a business owner be thinking about before a run for office?
Okay, so they're going to want to do the research, of course. Election law and campaign finance law are very strict and a little complicated, sometimes hard to understand. They don't always make very much sense. So there are different limits you can give to a campaign, for example, and that limit varies between being an individual, being a company. So you're going to want to look up on the Michigan Secretary of State website, which is fantastic, by the way, for the forms and all of the instructions and all of the regulations involved. Really does a good job explaining the rules. You may need, depending on what kind of elective office you're running for, to get a campaign finance or election attorney to guide you through things. It's not difficult to trip over some of these laws, so just be careful.
There has to be also some legal implications about you have a business to run,
Right.
and now you may be stepping into a whole other life.
Right. That may end up being a full-time job.
That's
so
right.
You need to make sure that you are doing some solid succession planning with your business. In the event that you are going to hand the reins over to somebody, you want to have that all planned out in advance. You want to have a valuation of your business and what's called a buy-sell agreement. And so that's going to be a contract attorney, a transactional attorney, somebody who specializes in business succession planning. It's sort of like an estate plan for your business. So you just want to make sure that that's all planned out in advance so that's not something that you're sort of ad hoc figuring out after you've already made that transition.
And this is a general business attorney that we're talking about?
Sure, most business attorneys are going to be able to do succession planning. You may also want to look at an estate planning attorney because most estate planning attorneys have a business succession planning attorney in their firm.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right.
Focus on Law, brought to you by Policella and Associates, PLLC.
Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next week.